We just did a... So if you can hear and see you and we hear you. Until we get that, hi everybody, hi. Everyone's saying hi. I assume that means we can hear you.
Yes?
Hey, Thomas and Brian. Cool, they can see us and hear us. Great. Hey everybody, welcome to 2019.
Yay!
Yay! A brand new year, a year full of brand new content from us.
Yay!
Starting with our clownfish video earlier in the week, but now this, and a very, very cool surprise video upcoming very soon.
It's exciting. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
It was unexpected and tons of fun.
If you have plans tomorrow, cancel them. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. If you have plans tomorrow, cancel them. Anyway, we're really excited for the new year. Excited to make all kinds of awesome Q&As and how-to videos, and we got some builds.
We got some important builds coming up.
Yeah.
The high-tech planet tank we're gonna do. We're gonna do another one. You might hear a little bit about potentially even tomorrow, possibly. Who knows?
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. Lots of stuff on deck. We're excited to have you guys along for the whole ride. Hopefully your holidays were great. I know mine were pretty good. I had a couple of weeks of vacay with the fam and did a little flying on planes and sleeping on friends' pull-out couches and stuff. It was a lot of fun. How about you?
I did a whole lot of staying at home with the family and just relaxing, which was excellent.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, I always have to take care of my tanks and stuff, but it was nice to have some time off, let the brain kind of wander back into blissfulness, and then join right back into Q&As and videos. And after a kind of a hiatus, it's a fresh start, and you have a new sense of energy and...
Invigorated, I would say. Invigorated.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. With that said, in our final Q&A, and I think one of our final videos before the holidays, we talked about a really cool little thing we're going to try and do for those who are interested is for a neat giveaway from time to time. We would give away some of Thomas's personal time to one person to have a one-on-one, like Skype call or FaceTime call or whatever, to have you guys meet face-to-face, show Thomas your aquariums, ask him your questions. He'd give you tips, tricks, praise, criticism if necessary. Really, it's a really cool little opportunity. And we told people to send in their photos before the holidays, saying, "Hey, over the holidays, send in photos of your fish or animals, or pets in general, celebrating the holidays with you guys." So, that said, we went through the submissions, and we have picked a winner.
We have
a winner. So, let's, no further ado, I will scan through these photos. There's a couple pets here. There's a couple pets that they sent in. First one, we'll start with the fish.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start with the fish. So, this...
A happy chubby yo-yo loach.
Happy chubby yo-yo loach with a belly full of bloodworms. We'll announce the winner. I'm just going to show her photos and see if she recognizes them.
Yeah, right, like she would.
Oh, what a
Whose photos are those?
That's just like the one I sent. Oh, that lucky girl. All right, so this is her yo-yo loach celebrating the holidays in their own way, the way yo-yo loaches do, I guess. So that's pretty cool. But she also sent in photos of her adorable puppy Luna wearing a little Santa hat. Also, Luna with a little Christmas present from Santa, who she said Luna was a little scared. And lastly, Luna on New Year's Eve with a little bit of cheesecake. I'm not sure she fed the cheesecake to Luna, or if Luna was just like, yeah, great, you get to eat cheesecake and I don't because I'm a dog. I don't know. Looks like a lot of fun, though. So the winner is, obviously, if you're paying attention, Madeline, if you're here, you are the winner.
Woohoo!
So awesome. Thank you so much for sending in those photos. It was a real treat seeing Luna and your fish and getting a glimpse of their holiday season. It was really great. So you are going to get a one-on-one call with Thomas via Skype or FaceTime or whatever works best for you.
WhatsApp, whatever you use.
Yeah, WhatsApp, whatever it is, we'll make that happen, and it'll be lots and lots of fun. And we'll do another one of these in the near future for anyone else who might be interested. With that said, I guess we just get into the actual
Q&A,
like the reason we're all here.
Cool.
With that said, let's start. The first question is actually from Madeline. She is a very an ardent supporter of us. Like, she's at these Q&As. She's always great to have around.
I dare say, unless somebody else somehow can prove otherwise, I think she's like our biggest fan.
I would say that she would definitely be categorized as such. Her question is, can you tell my boyfriend to propose to me? His name is Goro.
Goro, get on it before somebody else does.
She's good people, Goro. What are you waiting for?
I don't know. I don't know what it's... Goro, do it. Do it. Make the jump.
There you go, Madeline.
Lovely gal right in front of you. Go for it.
Play this for him. If he's not watching, Madeline, number one, that's strike one against Goro. Strike two because he hasn't proposed yet.
Yeah.
If he's not watching, that's strike two.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Mm.
But we'll see. Let us know how that works out. Okay, next question is, Tetras and angelfish in the same tank? 29 gallon?
I've actually covered this a bunch of times. It's a really popular question. So my thing with angels and smaller fish like tetras, full-grown adult angels can go after small tetras as if they're a food source because they are a predatory fish and they will see smaller fish as food and...
Issues, apparently.
Oh, no!
Yeah, so that's great. So we're going to have to jump back into this, which we can do, no problem, but we just have to... can anyone still see or hear us? I mean, I think our video is way behind here. Yeah, this is going to be an issue with streaming out in the boonies.
Well, if that's the case, we will just have to remain streaming at your house, my good sir.
It may have to be the way things go.
Yeah.
Yeah, let us know if you can still hear us. It seems like I got this working again. This guy's going. Our live stream health is not good.
It's fixed now.
Oh, excellent. You guys can see us and hear us. I hope so. I hope so. Okay, well then we will keep going then.
I'll recap that last question just in case. Big angels, little tetras, angels are predatory. We'll probably try to eat them, especially if you're adding small tetras to a tank that already has large angels. If you grow small baby angels with tetras that don't fit in their mouth and they eat prepared foods the whole time and you keep their bellies full, chances are they'll never see those smaller tetras as a food source. It's the only real safe way to do it.
Okay. Next up, how far away are the stars?
Not exactly the channel for this. I mean, I'm geeky, but not usually in that direction. Kyle Hill of Because Science, his channel would probably be much more apt to answer that. That said, I believe that the closest star to our solar system is Proxima Centauri, and it's like 4.22-ish light years away. And then the next closest ones are, everybody knows, Alpha Centauri.
I know it very well, yeah.
Alpha Centauri A and B.
Yeah.
And they're like 4.3 light years away. That's a really weird question for this channel, but I dig it. Thank you. If you mean starfish, they could be in tide pools.
Totally different
ball
game then.
They're not that far. If you're in a tide pool near a starfish, they could be underneath a rock that is, the height of your knee, and they'd be closer to you than you might think.
Fantastic. Thank you for the question, though. We appreciate really any question.
I'll take it.
Preferably aquatics related, but any question's good.
Yeah. If I know the answer, I'll give it to you.
Yeah. Next up, why do my angelfish always eat their eggs? I'm aware you're supposed to take them out, but not once have they hatched.
There is the distinct possibility that they're not fertile. Take a good look at the eggs. If they end up like milky in color, I believe that is an indicator that either there's like a bacterial issue or that they are not fertile and in the process of decomposition because they won't last forever. I don't know exactly what causes angels to eat their eggs. There's only been a few cases in which I've been exposed to angels that were breeding, one of which they were laying eggs on a heater and they were taking care of them. So I'm not sure. But I would first look into the markers for whether or not the eggs are even fertile, and if they're not fertile, that could speak volumes to why the angels are not treating them like fertile eggs. I'm sure it's also possible that stress or any stress that those angels are feeling could also change how they take care of their eggs, although I do find cichlids in general pretty good parents and protective. So, but yeah, find out if they're even fertile. That's a good place to start.
Cool. Can guppies live in a pot with a live plant in the water without a filter?
Honestly, potentially. Although I would always advocate that you have at least some kind of water movement. So if you're going to do like I'm going to refer to that as almost a container pond. So if you're going to have a container pond, and you're going to put some, floating plants in it and maybe a potted plant like a lily or something. They'll do a pretty good job at keeping the water viable for the fish, and making sure you're not getting too much waste in there, especially if you put a substrate in the bottom that's at least semi-porous so that you get some bacterial growth down there. But throw an air stone in there with an air pump so you're getting aeration as well, and that'll be a much more suitable home. But otherwise, if you can't get an internal filter for it, that's even better. And an internal filter will sit in there underneath all the plants and stuff. They're usually black. You won't have to see it. And it's just one cord coming out that you can plug into the wall. You can even hide that behind the plants. And that's a much safer bet to make sure that those fish stay happy and healthy long term.
Next up, my shrimp tank got infested with snails. What should I do to get rid of those pests?
Okay, so the complication with, there's ways to treat snails. Copper is an easy way to treat snails. It's also an easy way to kill every other invert that you have. So in a shrimp tank, it's not a viable option.
Actually, the next question, the next thing was, it said, why do some shrimp food have copper?
I have no idea. Couldn't even tell you.
Well, back up to the other question.
Here's the other thing. Just because something is, like for instance, copper will harm invertebrates, it's because in copper, high levels to them is very low levels to us. We can ingest a lot more copper without it really hurting us. That's why they're like, we have copper pipes in our homes, and some trace amounts of copper going through our system is no big deal. Whereas for invertebrates, that could be a big deal. It's just the level of copper in their bodies that causes toxicity is so much lower than ours. It doesn't mean they can't tolerate or don't need some amount of whatever element or mineral it is in their bodies in order to work properly. We could basically put anything into our systems, and in a high enough amount it's going to kill us. We can ingest electrolytes and salt and stuff like that. If we have way too much of it, we will die, because it will cause us to go hypernutremic, and then we will dehydrate even though we're ingesting water. And you could have so much water in your system, drink too much water, and then urinate out all your salts, which might be hypernutremia. Anyways, or hyponutremic. I don't remember which is which. But and then your nervous system shuts down because you need salts in your body for it to function. Long story short, for the shrimp, I would try an assassin snail as a great place to start. That's one snail that's going to eradicate a population of other snails. It shouldn't harm your shrimp. They are a snail predator. So I would probably go that route to start. You can also try manual removal, and yeah. No, I would probably try an assassin snail. It would be my go-to solution in that case.
First starter kit tank. Stock calculator tool says tank is good for fish that I want, but the filter isn't. Should I buy a more suitable canister, a supplementary filter when needed, or just rethink my stocking?
That's... It's funny because it's a really good question, but it really comes down to you, because what you're asking, in essence, is do I have enough budget to afford another filter? Do I ride out what I've got for now and only add like another hang-on or something if it's not enough, if I find it's not enough, which is honestly one way that I usually tell people to go. If you're riding the line and you're not sure if it's going to be enough, stick with what you got. And if you're finding you're having a hard time keeping up with your nitrates or your ammonia or whatever it is, you can always add another filter. But if you're certain, if you know that what you want to put in that tank, that filter's not really going to handle, and you know a canister filter is a good idea, unless you simply can't afford that canister filter, just buy the canister. I'm a huge proponent of canister filters over hang-ons for a lot of reasons. They hold a ton more media, which is a huge bonus because it really helps with, everybody likes to overstock their tanks. It really helps with that. But if you can't afford a canister and you don't want to just have two hang-ons because you think long-term, buying proprietary cartridges is going to be more than you want to spend or whatever it is, then yeah, rethink your stocking. But it really comes down to you, what you want to do. If you have the money for a canister, just go for it. You'll appreciate it in the long run. If you want to try riding it out with this filter and maybe add another smaller filter later if it's not enough, that's honestly a viable option. But if you don't want to go down that road of spending more money, then yeah, just rethink your stocking and maybe pick something that's going to work a little bit better for what you can afford.
That's solid advice, man.
I try.
Yeah, that was good. Before we get to the next question, just remember to hit that like button. That'll really help us out. We're only partway through the stream, so hitting that like button would really be great for us. If you're new, if you just tuned in going, what is this? Who are these guys? Thomas, Brian. We are with the gals, and we do a whole bunch of aquarium videos and these Q&As every 2 weeks. So if you have questions, ask them, and make sure to sub up. But first, hit that like button. It would really help us out. Thank you so much. Next question. Do platies prefer a community tank or a species-only tank?
That's a good question. It's an interesting question. I don't really think they have a preference based on the fact that they're a very simple and easy fish to keep. They seem to thrive in either of those situations. I will say categorically, fish probably prefer, again, probably, right? A biotope situation where they've got a setup that is most natural to their species origin and being kept only with species that they'd naturally encounter, they would probably in some way or another do better in that situation. But I don't know if it's even an amount that is measurable with something as easy to keep as a platy, because I've seen platies, mollies, guppies, swordtails thrive in community tanks with plants, live plants, without live plants. I've seen them thrive in species-only tanks, again, with live plants, without live plants. They will breed if you've got males and females together, no matter what situation you've got going on. So it is, yeah, it's hard to say, but I would always tend to lean towards, if you want them to be the most natural versions of themselves in behavior, and how they, thrive, then I would say always aim for a biotope, always aim for species specific. But again, in this case, I don't think it's something that is even measurable because they are such a flexible and easy species to work with.
How long do I need to wait before I can put a betta fish in a new 5-gallon tank?
I would say, honestly, the best case scenario is, probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Start seeding the tank with live bacteria or any bacterial starter like Big Al's Biosupport or Hagen Cycle or Seachem Stability, whatever it is. And add either food, like flake food, crushed up, or pellet food to the tank. Or you can even use ammonia and test the water and just have your cycle go through in that way. So it's a fishless cycle. That way when you put the beta in the tank's already cycled. It's going to be able to support the beta without issue with whatever feeding and everything you put into it. That's the best way to do it, especially for the health of that fish. You can do a cycle with the fish. It just requires you to, again, continue adding that bacteria, but now we've got the fish and we want a soft spike with the ammonia. You don't want a harsh high spike. So the whole idea is you add small amounts of food when you feed. You're really staying on top of that bacterial additive, and you always run the risk of having that ammonia spike in the fish, possibly getting a secondary infection, stuff like that. So my recommendation is to do the fishless cycle, get a good test kit for ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. Master test kit from API works really well. And do the cycle without the fish. Once everything's ready, throw that fish in and you're good as gold.
Nice. Next up, how can you do a water change in the winter? I use a heater to keep the temperature at 30 degrees Celsius, but when I add new water, it's really cold and I cannot add hot water directly to the tank. I have an 18-gallon tank stocked with blood parrots. That's a pickle.
Okay, so I guess I would have to ask why you can't turn your hot and cold taps on together so that you've got water coming out of the taps that is going to be close to your tank temperature, at least by feel. You can always use a thermometer as well, which I do from time to time. But if you can't do that, then what I would recommend is getting a Rubbermaid Brute container. I've got 2 of them myself. I get a caster base for them. They have wheels, so you can kind of wheel them around. Fill that up with cold water, and before, like a day or 2 before you want to do your water change, and just let it sit in the house. And that way it kind of comes up to temperature with at least the house. And if you want, you can even at that point throw a heater in it, a spare heater, and bring it up the rest of the way before you do your water change. And that way you're not running the risk of shock in the winter if all you are capable of putting in is cold water. I don't know, maybe you're worried about the water that goes through your water tank. Why can't you use the hot water? That's my question. But yes, you can always pre-prepare the water in a Brute container. If it's a smaller tank, 5-gallon buckets is fine. I've got a lot of tanks that I'm going to be setting up and stuff, so I like to use a big container so I can kind of get all the water I need. I think mine is a 45-gallon container all at once, so I can do all my tanks in one shot.
Cool. This next one is super vague, no details about the aquarium, but I'll ask, can I use lava rock for my aquarium?
100%. we often use lava rock, especially for cichlid aquariums and other freshwater aquariums. It's a great, really cool porous rock. It ranges in color from dark browns, blacks, all the way up to brighter rusty reds. And it's got a really interesting shape and texture to it. And they even pre-carve it for you. You can buy like versions of it that have holes in it and stuff.
Is there any situation where you can't use it? Like, are there any
I can't really think of a situation. Lava rock is inert, so it doesn't really mess with your pH at all. I can't think of a reason why, unless you, the one thing is it's very porous. So when you're cleaning your tank, having a power head that you can blow onto the rocks to kind of dislodge any debris that might be stuck in it, that's a consideration whenever you use a really porous rock. But I can't think of a instance in which you wouldn't want to use it. Unless you've got very sensitive fish with skin that are liable to rub up against a rough surface, then you might not want to use most rocks.
Okay. Otherwise, should be good to go.
Yeah.
Next up, this person's been saying the name is Parakeet, and for the last little while they've been saying, I'm a parakeet. So Parakeet asks, how many tequila sunrise guppies can I fit in a 10-gallon with a male betta?
I would do 0. I know that's not the answer you want. Betas are not really happy about any other fish in the aquarium that has flamboyant finnage. They will often see it as a threat or a infringement on their territory. Anything that they feel might be competing with them visually usually ends up a target. So I would say 0 guppies. I would not keep guppies with them. You want other fish that are going to be fast moving that the beta is unlikely to be able to catch or get a hold of or feel threatened by. So bottom feeders are great because betas don't usually, it's possible that they will, but don't usually see them as a threat. Another really great fish, in my opinion, would be zebra danios. Danios in general are very fast, and betas have a hard time catching them because they are quick. They are often used as dither fish for that reason. They also are very fast swimmers. They never stop moving. They like to usually stay mid-water in the tank or closer to the top. Yeah, I wouldn't do guppies. You're asking for trouble.
Okay, before the next question, for all you new people here, smash that like button if you're liking what you're seeing. If you have questions, ask them. We'll do our best to get to them. So hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, obviously subscribe. I'll keep mentioning that. But next up, how do you plant or attach coral to rock in your tank?
Haha, plant coral. So I like to, there's different ways I do it. If the coral is on a rock already, attached to a rock rather than a plug or a disc that's artificial, I will often just place that rock somewhere in the tank that makes sense. And I'll put it down.
The problem is that
both of which are in download and 500 kilobytes upload. Unlimited is $90 a month. $90 a month for 20-year-old technology. And then my satellite internet, which unfortunately has a multi-second lag, it's usually about 2 seconds of latency, is only 15 megabytes per second download, and the upload is something like 1 or 2 megs. But the problem is it fluctuates a lot and is subject to poor weather. So if we have clouds in the sky, the signal sucks. And yeah, it's unreliable.
Needless to say, when I come here to do the live streams, I have to operate off my cellular data, which generally is okay, but today it's given us a bit of trouble. So sorry guys for the lag, for the technical issues. We may have to resume these at my home for the next ones. But
which just means we don't have our nice tanks and stuff in the background. But.
Yeah, but that's okay. At least we'll have a working internet connection. So sorry about the lag, guys. Technical issues. With that said, I think we are back now. I think we got a good connection again. I don't see anyone complaining anymore. So
yay.
Let's move on to the next question then. If I can find it, because of course I see that we're lagging and I start losing my mind. What will high bioload do to a planted tank?
High bioload in a planted tank will often can often result in either excess algal growth or accelerated plant growth, depending on... See, this is the thing. There's always a balance with plant tanks. So you can have a high bioload in a plant tank, and provided the lighting, the amount of lighting you're using, and the amount of CO2 that's in the water matches up with the amount of waste being produced by the fish, you'll have kind of a harmony that results in good plant growth and no real... issues to speak of beyond that. No nutrient spikes, no nitrate issues, no algae growth. But if for whatever reason you've got a very high bioload, but maybe your lighting's not enough or your CO2's not enough, that will often just result in algae. Almost every situation with a planted tank that has either nutrient or CO2 or lighting out of balance, so really high lighting, low CO2, low nutrients, algae. Really high nutrients, low lighting, low CO2, algae. Really high CO2, really low lighting, and low nutrients, that usually just ends up with dead fish, because high CO2 means less oxygen in the water, which can be a problem. But yeah, chances are, as long as everything's in balance, you're gonna have a hard time having a high nutrient issue with a large bioload. If it's out of balance, you're probably gonna see it in the form of algae.
Now, one person just asked a very important question.
Okay.
Where's Brian's donuts, Thomas?
Yeah, I brought Brian donuts.
Yeah, but I think he's got a point, and I'm assuming this is his point, that you should really have donuts for me every time we do these. I think the donuts are the key. Maybe we need donuts to avoid lag. Maybe it's like some kind of universal... I don't know.
It's a bad omen not to have donuts.
Maybe. John B., you are onto something. Thomas, I'm sick of not having donuts.
Okay, so here's the thing. Donuts are lovely. The ones...
To say the least.
My wife makes, Eva, when she makes donuts, we all just drool because they're really, really good. However, they take some time to make, and we can't make donuts every time, Brian. So what I can get Tim Hortons donuts.
That's it. You know what? Donuts are donuts. I'm fine. Like that's it. Like I prefer Eva's donuts, but John B, you've stirred the pot
donuts.
here. I appreciate that. Donuts from now on.
Donuts.
That'll get us out of this funk that we're having with the internet. Thank you for looking out for me. Someone has to.
I love you, Brian.
I know. All right, so next up, I love this one. Hello, fish god.
I think I'm not even close to that, but...
That's a lot of pressure.
No kidding.
Big shoes to fill.
The flattery. Big shoes to fill.
I am having an infestation of nerite snails in my community tank. Is there a humane way to control the population?
Nerite snails? That's a convenient issue to have.
Is it?
Trade them. Nerite snails are popular. For even if it's saltwater or freshwater, doesn't matter. If you have nerite snails, just start, like, what are they? Zebra nerites? Anyways, just put them up for sale for your local fish hobbyist. Give them away. Lots of people use nerite snails for algae control. If you mean that the nerite snails that you have are laying calcareous eggs on literally everything in the tank and they never hatch, which is totally normal, how do you stop that? You stop having nerite snails and then you pick them all off individually. It is one of the biggest problems. Everybody who has nerite snails pretty much runs into that issue. They just lay calcareous eggs everywhere, they never hatch, and you've got white dots all over the tank. Welcome to the club!
Fish god hath spoken!
Jeez.
Johnny B says, I guess I'll just have to set up tanks in my studio, and we can shoot there again with tanks and internet.
Yes.
That's on the list, dude.
He has 3 tanks he's supposed to be setting
like
up.
the ones in the background, like all our other Q&As at my place, you see the tanks in the box in the background. Those are full. Like there's tanks in there. I just have to set them up for a video we're gonna do. It's just a matter of doing that. We're so busy shooting stuff with him. I haven't done that yet, but it's on my radar. I'm gonna have to probably do it sooner than later, I'm guessing, with this internet situation. Okay, next up. I believe I have 2 female balloon mollies and 2 male guppies. Only thing is, I think my molly keeps giving birth. Does that mean it's the guppy breeding with the molly?
I wouldn't...
Stuff's getting weird in there.
Haha. Sounds like a bow wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing you
Swinger fish.
If I'm not mistaken, mollies can retain sperm for a long time. So if you got them even in the last, I don't know how long it is, but even if it's within the last month, let's say, you acquire them, or it could even potentially be a bit longer than that, they could just have retained sperm from when they were at the store. So they could just be giving birth because they've been holding on to the good stuff that they got while they were at the store with the rest of the balloon mollies. So that's what I would probably put my money on. I'm not sure if guppies are able to crossbreed with mollies. I wouldn't be shocked. But I think retention of sperm is probably the answer. Unless you've had them for 2 years and just got mollies. Or sorry, just got guppies and threw them in and all of a sudden you're having babies. Post pictures of the offspring as they grow.
Yes. I'd be curious to see that.
Yeah.
All right, next up, I'm getting my 20-gallon restarted, and I was wondering on stocking, would it be able to handle 5 female bettas and 5 green, whatever this word is, Corys? Aeneas? Aeneas?
Sure. 20-gallon, I think you'd probably be okay. So you're doing a beta sorority. Just so you know, female betas can still be a little aggressive with each other. So just make sure you have lots of either plants or wood or ornaments and stuff in the tank to create different territories and to break line of sight so that they could be swimming in the tank and not see something on the other side of the tank. Driftwood with lots of branches can work pretty well for that. Having rocks near the bottom and caves and stuff can help. Do whatever you can to mitigate any aggression that the betas are going to have with each other. But ultimately, I think that stock list is fairly appropriate for a 20-gallon, as long as you don't go crazy when you feed. I mean, anybody can go crazy with their feed, but just keep an eye on nutrients, and you may have to do some extra water changes if your fish like to eat a lot and you like to oblige them.
My tap water comes out at 8.6 pH.
Nice and high, hold it.
And doesn't come down for weeks. What is the best way to buffer it closer to neutral quickly? Thanks.
pH down, probably. What I would also look at is what the alkalinity of your water is, because pH is often buffered. pH gets buffered by the carbonate hardness of the water. So if you have a lot of carbonate hardness, you will often have a high pH, and you can try to use an acid to bring the pH down, but if you don't address the hardness of the water, the pH is just going to come back up over time as it gets buffered by that carbonate hardness. But there are lots of products that will help to bring the pH down. Seachem makes a slew of them. I'm a big fan of Seachem products in general. They tend to work very, very well. So I would look into a pH neutral pH buffer, something that's going to bring it down to 7. Yeah, that's what I would do, and just use that. Either that or switch over to African cichlids and stop worrying about it, because they will love that pH.
Sweet. Have a newer 10-gallon tank that is growing brown algae. It's been cycled for a few months, but can't get pH above 6.0.
Ooh.
Not near a window. Timer on tank for 8 hours of light a day. How do I stop it?
6.0. You're not injecting CO2 or anything. It's just naturally low. Your tap water comes out at 6. It's curious.
Yeah.
If your tap water doesn't come out at 6, something has to be dropping the pH that dramatically. Biological processes in the tank, if they're happening in any tank when biological processes are happening, the pH will slowly drop over time, but it's usually a long time because acids are produced through those biological processes. So your pH will naturally go down over time, which is another reason that water changes can be really important, not only to remove nitrate, but also to make sure your pH doesn't crash over a long period of time. That said, I can't think of why your pH would be going down unless you're adding something to it to drop the pH, unless there's something in there creating acid, like organic matter decomposing rapidly, perhaps. Not sure. You probably have a fairly low pH to start with out of your tap, I would guess. In which case, buffering the water before you use it for the aquarium is your best bet. Same idea. Seachem makes all kinds of buffers to bring pH to neutral. I would just go down that road sometimes, or just change your stock, whatever you keep in the tank. So like I recommended for 8.6, African cichlids. 6.0, Tetras that come from similar regions where the pH is that low is a great idea. So just sometimes it's easier to tailor the stocking of your aquariums to your tap water than it is to try to constantly modify your tap water to fit the fish you want to keep. But people do it because sometimes people fall in love with a fish that their water's just not good for. So we do what we can to change it to make sure that that fish is happy.
Next up, I'm considering starting a 60-liter freshwater planted tank, but would like to avoid using compressed CO2.
Oh.
How successful can one really be with liquid CO2 supplements?
Pretty successful. Low-tech planted tanks can be gorgeous, and there's different ways to tackle that. Our series on low-tech planted tanks, which hasn't really concluded, but it's essentially done. The tank's behind me. It just doesn't have fish yet because I'm still humming and hawing on what I want to stick in there.
If you haven't seen the series yet, by the way, we have the build series.
Yeah, it's up for you. Have a look at it. There are lots of plant suggestions. But if you pick your plants, I'm losing words today. If you pick plants that are appropriate for a tank that isn't going to have injected CO2, plants that are going to be robust in low CO2, low light, low nutrient situations, they're going to do well. They won't grow as fast as they would in a tank that has compressed CO2 and high lighting and high nutrients, but you can still be really, really successful. So liquid CO2 isn't really CO2. It's really important to point that out. Liquid CO2 supplements, like I've got some right here, like Flourish Excel, which I do use periodically. It's actually a partially complete carbon chain that plants can use in place of CO2 to some degree. So it's supposed to give the plants what they would normally be kind of sort of constructing themselves by using CO2. They would construct a carbon chain out of it that turns into sugars and blah, 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 blah. So what you're doing, instead of providing the CO2 that they would use as the beginning building block of making this complex carbon chain or carbohydrate or whatever the heck it is, you're giving them a partially complete version which they can then take and then add a little bit onto and use. I don't think it's anything like using CO2. I'm not going to say that you can use it instead of CO2 exclusively and your plants would perform in the same way as they would with CO2. But what I will say is I have found personally that it does aid in situations where plants aren't doing as well because you just don't have the amount of stock in your tank in terms of fish and stuff to provide the respiration necessary to put enough CO2 into the water that they are able to photosynthesize effectively with the amount of nutrients and light you have on the tank. So it can be used to kind of help bring an equilibrium to a tank that is a little bit out of balance and prevent algae and make sure the plants are growing. But it will not replace, in my opinion, compressed CO2 in the same way. I wouldn't try keeping highlight plants in a highlight tank with high nutrients out. You'd normally have compressed CO2. I wouldn't just use Flourish Excel and expect to have the same results. So set up the tank. Like if you just don't want to get into compressed CO2, set up a low-tech planted tank, do some research on low-tech planted tanks. We've got a build for you to take a look at. I've got my top five low-tech planted tank plants. We did a video on that. I give you more suggestions than that in this series though. So, and then you'll see, you can set up all kinds of really pretty, really nice low-tech planted tanks and still do really, really well.
Yeah. So definitely, yeah, check out that series. Can't stress it enough. And for those of you interested, we have a high-tech build coming in the near future.
It's this tank.
Yeah, it's been sitting there waiting for a while. We're going to be getting to that, so that's pretty cool. For all you newbies who are joining us who might not know what this is, we're doing a live Q&A. Hit that like button, ask us your questions, and sub up, please. That would be hugely helpful for us. Next up, what is better for a heavily planted tank? Chemi Pure Blue, Chemi Pure Green, or Purigen 30-gallon heavily planted tank?
I often don't use much in the way of chemical filtration on planted tanks unless I have a reason to. But that said, I believe Chemi Pure Green was formulated specifically for use in planted tanks so that it didn't interfere with any of the nutrients you may actually be adding for the plants. So that said, I would probably say of the three, I would go Chemi Pure Green. Purigen, I do really like and I do use in various situations, but I've never used it on a planted tank and I'm not sure if it would be removing anything that you'd want in there for the plants. So it's hard. I'm not sure on that one. Depending on what you want to remove, it would change which of the two you potentially want to be using. If you just want a general chemical media in there, I'd probably go Chemi Pure Green, I think. I think that's what I would probably do.
Cool.
That said, I don't run anything in yet. If I ever do stick something in these tanks in that way, I'll obviously bring that up in the series and let you guys know why I'm using it, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. How do you properly size a circulation pump to your freshwater aquarium? Thanks for all the great content.
Really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're a freshwater tank with live plants and you need extra circulation because you're having detritus settle in places you don't want it. For instance, on this tank, which I haven't talked about yet in any series or anything, but I ended up adding a small Akamai KPS wavemaker pump to this tank to just create some extra circulation because I was having a bunch of debris from, just dust from the substrate and stuff settling on the leaves of the plants, which was causing a problem. So I added this pump and it's fixed that issue entirely. I sized that pump to this tank This isn't even turned up all the way. So I like, for certain situations, getting a pump that is variable in speed so you can dial it into what's actually going to work perfectly. If you're looking for a pump that is going to help move waste in a large cichlid tank, let's say, that's settling on the bottom, you're going to put it on the back of the tank so that waste doesn't stay behind the rock and it gets blown towards the filter. I go higher up in GPH for that, because if I'm blowing down the length of a 6-foot aquarium, it's better to have the punch to the other end of the tank, and it's behind the rock, so it's not really going to affect the fish very much. It's not like you're going to be blowing them around the front of the tank. So it all depends on the situation. It's really hard to have a straightforward answer, but most pumps will have specific uses. So power heads versus wave pumps, for instance. Power heads, I find, can work really well in a situation where you're trying to blow dirt down the back of an aquarium so it gets to a filter. It also works really well if you're still using under gravel and you need to cap it with something to kind of power it up a bit more instead of just using air stones and lift tubes. If you're using it as a tool to blow debris off of rocks before a water change, power heads are great for that. If you're trying to add more circulation for oxygenation and you want a widespread flow that's not going to push the fish around very much, a wave maker pump is going to work a lot better, or a propeller style pump, which people often refer to as wave makers. A prop pump is going to work a lot better because it's got a much more widespread flow. It's not so much of a jet coming out of a power head. It's gentle. It'll create kind of massive flow in the whole tank. You can see in this tank, maybe or maybe not in the background, that all the leaves are moving a little bit, swaying just a little bit, but they're not, you know, being blown straight over. You're not getting like a tide pool or a rip tide in the tank, just, you know, turning into a vortex, which is obviously not what you want. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Different pumps for different things, different sizes depending on the tank.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, and most pumps will have, you know, tank ratings on them. Good for this size tank to this size tank, etc.
From my good donut advocate, John B. Are there any cichlids besides angels that can go in a tank with tropical fish?
Absolutely. Epistogrammas are a cichlid. Rams are cichlids. Crebensis are cichlids. They're all pretty good options for community tanks, in my opinion. I always recommend trying to avoid, especially with cribs or something like that, crebensis, you don't want to get them breeding in your tank, because if they start breeding in the tank, they often get much more aggressive and they can bully the rest of the fish in the area. I've seen a small pair of cichlids push every other fish in a 55-gallon tank to the opposite end of the tank up in the corner. It can happen because nobody wants to mess with any fish. Fish don't like fighting with other fish. They really don't, especially little fish with teeth. Nobody wants to get bit.
Nobody does.
But yeah, there are all kinds of freshwater cichlids. Apistos are great because they're tiny. They do like densely planted tanks and lots of hiding spaces, but they are flamboyant and beautiful.
Cool. Stephen Gregory says, my first tank just arrived. Wish me luck.
Yeah!
Good luck!
Keep us updated on how your tank goes. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.
Yeah. For sure. Okay, next up, any pre-filters a good idea? Are pre-filters a good idea? Do they damage the filter motor at all?
Pre-filters can be awesome, especially if you have small fish, fry, shrimp, baby shrimp, stuff that you need to keep out of the filter intake. They also work well to extend the longevity of the mechanical filtration and biological filtration in the filter. The caveat or catch or whatever with pre-filters is that they have to be maintained on regular intervals. You don't want them to get so bogged up that they are restricting the flow to the filter. A restriction of flow to the filter is not good for the biomedia because it needs oxygen and nutrients to maintain that bacterial colony in there, so it will affect the bacteria if you allow it to get clogged up and restrict the flow. Obviously, it's going to put some stress on the impeller and the motor, can cause excess heat, excess wear too soon. So yes, they're great if you're willing to stay on top of them. If you don't want to stay on top of them, getting your hand in the tank potentially twice a week or more, because it can happen if you've got a lot of debris in the tank. If that doesn't sound like something you want to do, then I would say leave it off and just, you know, work with the media that's in the filter as it is and do your filter media changes when necessary with the whole filter. Otherwise, yeah, I think it's great to extend that because it's usually just a sponge cover over top. You can take it off quick, rinse it, squeeze it out, you know, just, you know, make sure it's got all the debris out and slap it back on. And doing that could potentially save the media in the filter from becoming bogged up, and it'll perform better longer. Your biomedia won't get covered in gunk and need to be rinsed off and stuff. So it can be awesome if you stay on top of it. If you don't want to stay on top of it, I don't use pre-filters personally unless I've got something in the tank that I don't want getting sucked into the filter. Because I can be lazy with some things.
You're human.
I'm not going to lie.
But you are a fish god!
Oh, jeez. Fish. No. I'm not.
Demigod!
Oh, okay, fine.
All right, there we go. We found a happy medium. Okay.
Demigod.
All right, fantastic. Can live plants cause a green algae bloom?
I don't think they can cause it. I think, in a way, a backwards kind of way, you may find that you end up with green algae bloom after you have live plants. But I think really what probably has happened is you put live plants in and you feed more because you think the plants can take the nutrients, or you're adding fertilizers because you have the plants in there now and they're not photosynthesizing fast enough to uptake all of that. And as a result, you end up with algae that are basically using up the excess nutrients in the system. I think that's more likely to be what's happening. However, you can add plants to a tank that have algae on them and then have an outbreak of that algae in the tank because it has then been introduced. So blackbeard algae, hair algae, stuff like that. That can happen. But I think more likely people put plants in their tanks, think, okay, the plants are going to do all this stuff now, so I can overfeed, or I can do this more, or do that more, and then the plants can't keep up, and then you end up with that algae as a result.
Do plecostamuses grow fast? Or
Plecostomus.
Plecostomus.
Plecostamuses! Full house!
Do John Stamoses grow fast, or do they grow slowly over time? I know they get huge, but do they grow rapidly?
Depending on the species, and it really does depend, they can grow pretty quick. A common pleco grows relatively fast. Whereas sometimes I find, like, if I feel like breeding, let's say I feel like breeding my leopard frog plecos, I feel like I can't get them to grow up fast enough. But I think proportionally, normally, any fish that has very small fry but gets to a very large size is going to grow pretty rapidly. So if you've got, a fish that has a potential of getting 2 feet and you buy a 1-inch version of it, chances are it's going to be pretty big even after 6 months, because I find a lot of fish species grow proportionally to the smallest version of it, as a baby up to its adult size. So a lot of fish will hit a plateau. Like, you'll get a fish that might get 2 feet long, gets up to a foot and a bit, maybe 13 inches, and then the rest of the growth from that to max size is very slow. But you usually have a very rapid growth for the beginning. Fish don't like to stay tiny juveniles for very long because in the wild, the faster you can get up to a decent size, the less chance you have of being predated upon through that process. I hope that makes sense. Again, not all species, but some.
How long should I keep Discus Fry with the adults? Now, I know you're not a discus guy.
I'm not. I can't answer that.
No?
I straight up can't answer that.
No sweat.
I don't know.
But you are are discus on the horizon for you? Like in the future?
Actually, I've talked about this a few times now. I'm terrified of keeping discus because there's a certain, in my opinion, and from what research I have done, I've done some research, I just have never dived into it. There's a certain amount of discipline required because you have to stay on top of water changes. You have to keep nutrient levels low. You want them to thrive. Discus can go, their health can decline quickly if they're not in the right conditions. And I very simply am terrified that I will get lazy one day, miss a water change or something, and it will go horribly wrong. But I'm going to do it. I will do discus. What I will say is I know discus have to stay with their parents, or should stay with their parents for a period of time, because discus fry feed on the slime coat of the parents. So they use their parents as shelter and a food source. It's like nursing for a period of time. I don't know how long that period of time is, but I think it's fascinating that discus do that and that their fry rely on their parents in that way. It's very cool to see fish have a relationship with their young that's more close-knit like that. A lot of people think that, fish aren't really parents, but cichlids are pretty good parents from my experience. Anyways, yeah, I don't know, but it's a really interesting question, and hopefully I will know a lot more about discus in the somewhat near future.
Cool. Now, this question relates a lot to the video we released this past week. Are saltwater I guess it means saltwater fish like clownfish, cardinals, hard to care for.
No.
Watch our video.
Yeah, so I just actually did a video on clownfish care, which is specifically Ocellaris, but it actually applies to many species of clownfish. Not hard. If you want to keep things basic, which you absolutely can, don't feel like you have to get anemones or corals because you have clownfish. You do not. They don't care, especially because 99.9% of the ones we get now, especially Ocellaris and Percula, are captive raised, captive bred, have never seen a coral or an anemone in their life. They just thrive in captivity. They do really well. They're a very easy fish to keep, in terms of saltwater especially. So you just need to learn the skill, which is an easy skill, it's not hard, of adding salt to water and measuring it. And it's going to be synthetic marine salt. You can't just use table salt. And use something like a refractometer is my preference to measure the salt. It's not difficult. And that's the only difference, really, between saltwater aquarium keeping for clownfish and freshwater aquarium keeping for a community tank.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to add salt to the water. That's really the only difference.
And again, we've got a video on that too, setting up that basic aquarium.
Yeah.
And
So it's a super basic.
how to make that transition from freshwater to saltwater. And we have people say, oh, well, look at those fake corals, but it's because it's really to help guide you from freshwater into saltwater. Baby steps, hold your hand through it, and then check out our clownfish video that tells you really how to care for those and how generally hardy they are. I think it's a good place to start.
And I want to be like, I want to go on record saying this.
Okay.
A lot of people are purists in the sense that if you're going to keep a saltwater tank, you have to have live rock, you have to have corals, you have to have all kinds of invertebrates, you have to make a reef system. You absolutely do not have to do that. You don't. And I know it's, everybody thinks, like, just like Brian said, people say, well, that's not a real saltwater tank, you've got, fake corals. Who cares? If you want a fish tank and you want to experience clownfish, they don't need corals.
If there's saltwater in there, it's a real saltwater tank.
Yes, you can keep it simple. You could do live rock, which isn't coral. Takes absolutely no extra care. You could just do live rock if you don't want to do fake ornaments and stuff, and fish, and that's only. Fish only with live rock. Fowler. There's an abbreviation for it. It's a completely valid way of doing it. If you want to put rainbow gravel in there instead of a substrate, whatever, and use live rock, nobody, who's anybody to say you're doing something wrong? If it appeals to you, you're doing something right. As long as you're caring for the fish properly and you're giving it the care that it requires and the environment it requires with the water, smooth sailing. Have fun. Not everybody needs to do a reef tank because their kids want clownfish or because they want to have a couple clownfish. I support you. All you naysayers, just calm down. Let people have what they want. Mm-hmm. As long as they're doing a good job and everybody's happy and the fish are happy, everything's all right. Everything's copacetic.
Indeed. Everyone, one last time, feel free to like the video if you like these Q&As, if you're liking this sort of back and forth with your questions and this guy giving you answers. Hit that like button. We'd really appreciate it. Next up, what is a good 3-gallon tank light?
I don't know. Depends what you want to do with your 3-gallon tank. I'm assuming you're probably 3 gallons. You probably just want something to light the tank. I would use almost any clip-on LED light meant for aquariums is going to light the tank sufficiently so that you can enjoy your fish. Really. I think there's a couple Seapora lights that fit the bill. For sure. There's probably an ISTA light or two that fits the bill that we have on Big Al's, BigAlsPets.com or BigAlsPets.ca. And yeah, you don't got to go crazy. If you want to keep live plants or stuff or anything like that in a 3-gallon tank, which is fine, usually you're going to keep things like a Nubius and whatever, those lights are going to work anyways. Not many people are going to go crazy throwing all kinds of crazy light-demanding plants in a 3-gallon tank just because plants grow pretty large. But a Nubius and stuff, you'll still be okay with that light.
Cool. Is a gravel vac necessary for a planted tank?
I like to have one, but I don't truly gravel vac planted tanks unless I have a section of just sand or just gravel. So if I have it partitioned off, so the planted sides of the tank, or like I have 2 little planted islands in the tank, let's say, and they're in planted substrate, I will almost categorically never clean that. You cause a lot more problems than you solve when you try to gravel vac plant substrate. But if I've got, decorative gravel around it, then I will absolutely gravel vac that because it's not going to make it to the plants easily, or it's just going to be mulm under that capped gravel or partitioned off gravel. I do, however, like to hold the bell of my gravel siphon over top of the plants or close to the leaves, especially carpeting plants and stuff, I'll just gently poke it down on the plants, not to compress them in any way, and definitely not to go down into the gravel, but just to remove anything that's just trapped within the leaves of the plants. With carpeting plants, I find that pretty critical, just to not end up with potential algae growth between the leaves and stuff. And sometimes it works really well to help remove some types of algae that are sitting on the plant leaves. Like I had one kind of algae in this planted tank that was just like balls of green gunk. And they weren't really attached to the leaves. If I just blew them off with my hand, they'd come off. But it was a lot easier just to stick my gravel vac on top of the plant leaf, and it just sucked it right off. And that's so there is some advantage to having it. Do I think it's absolutely necessary for a planted tank? No.
Cool. All right, we are at an hour now. With this internet being dicey the way it is, I think we'll cut it off. We were saying we'd try and maybe do longer ones. I think we're going to keep trying out this format, guys. We're new to Saturday mornings now. We moved to the Saturdays. We're not doing it every week now, by the way. We're going to see how the support is. We're going to see how many people turn up for these things. Obviously, the more support we get, the more often we can do them.
Absolutely.
But right now, for the new year, we've started off every other Saturday. So this Saturday, so next Saturday, stay in bed, sleep in, watch cartoons, whatever. And then the Saturday after that, don't do those things. Come here and watch us and spend time with us.
With donuts.
With donuts. Yes, with donuts. Realistically, I'm going to have to be the one bringing the donuts. I'm the one coming here. We'll see.
We go for a drive every morning to town.
Fair enough. Okay.
I have to drive to town because I live in the boonies.
We'll work out the logistics here on the donut logistics. But with that said, every other Saturday, so make sure you guys join us. We will ask another question after all this, but I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining us. It was awesome having all of you guys here and asking your Q's and him giving me A's, and it's always a big pleasure for us. So with that said, we want to tell you again, tomorrow there's a very special surprise. Just, don't be too busy tomorrow. Don't go out anywhere. Just stay at home. Keep your eyes on you. If you get notifications, keep your eyes open. We got some cool stuff coming. We're excited for it. Anything else you want to add to this long-winded diatribe I'm going on?
Okay. I know we're not doing Q&As as often right now, and we'll probably add more later if the demand is definitely there.
Yes.
But don't feel like we're not releasing as much content without that, because it's in place of that other Q&A. We're releasing an extra video that week.
Yeah.
So we're still doing two videos a week. It's going to be a video and a stream, or it's going to be two videos.
Yeah, so still lots of stuff coming from us, but the Q&A is just, unless we see that support, like more people coming, showing up for these things, we're going to have to do it every 2 weeks. With that said, I have one more question here. Funny enough, we'll bookend it nicely with Madeline asking, are you going to make a fish profile series? I've seen the video about the clownfish, but it would be awesome if you made it a full series about all kinds of fish.
Done. Yeah, we want to. So
it's been on our minds for a while, like that idea of doing like individual fish profiles. So I think why not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing, like, I think what our goal is at the end of the day as a channel is we really want to bring as much information that as well, seasoned hobbyists and people who have been in the hobby for a long time. I'm so glad to have you guys here. It's a lot of fun to kind of geek out with other people. And, we all kind of have our own niche. Not all of us know everything about all fish. Sometimes we know just a lot about just the fish we're most interested in. So, but really, my goal is to try and help people who are newer to the hobby and who might be just looking to get into the hobby, access information in a way that's kind of fun and exciting and goofy, that would otherwise be very dry. And absorb it and have fun and learn. So things like fish profiles speaks directly to that. I think it's an amazing idea. It's something we've wanted to do, but it's just the list of videos we want to do and the amount of suggestions we get is so tall. It's actually really hard to decide on which one we're going to do next. Yeah. But the clownfish one, I think, is the start. I think you're right. I think it should be the start of a series where we kind of touch on more fish. How often we do that, I don't know, because we have a lot of fish. Yeah. We have a lot of builds we have to get through. So right now in the studio, we've got 2 tanks, and I literally in the studio have 2 fish, and they're the clownfish, and that's all that's in this studio. I have to go get fish for this tank. We have to set up the other tank. We got to do another freshwater. There's another bigger tank I can't really talk about, and yeah, so there's a lot of stuff coming, and I want to get a lot done, and I want to get a lot more in here, and have you guys along for that journey, and then we can start hopefully diving into more and more other videos like profiles. And that's another reason we had decided to try to dial back a little bit on the Q&As to afford us more time to accomplish that stuff. So not saying we won't go back to a weekly Q&A, but for the time being, I think that's the best way to kind of get us where we need to be, get all the fish and tanks and everything in here, and have those build series for you guys to watch. And then we can kind of even play around even more.
Yeah, and again, if you guys like the Q&As, if you want to see them going back to weekly, the best thing you can do is share them, tell people about them, have people show up for them live with us on the day. Saturdays at 11 a.m. is what we're doing every other Saturday. Tell people, have them show up, and again, the more support, the more people we have come out, the better chances are we can justify getting these on a weekly basis again. So thanks again for all of you people who show up to these, all of our regulars, all you new people who are here and not really sure what this is. Check out the rest of our videos. I'm sure you'll love it. We have a lot of fun producing them. So thanks again to everybody. One last thing, someone says we should start a GoFundMe to get Thomas an arowana.
Yes.
You should do that.
Honestly, here's the thing. I really would. I don't know. I feel weird asking people to help me do something like that. Maybe I shouldn't.
You did not. He suggested it. It was his suggestion.
I know. I would love an arowana other than the one that's tattooed on my back. Asian arowana, I would absolutely love. Blue base, blood red, I would love. Bukit Mira blue even. Pick an Asian arowana and I'm pretty gold. But
I gotta say,
one day
we got some people trying to like advocate for me getting donuts. Another people like trying to get you arowanas. You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
This is great. Donuts and arowanas. I dig it.
We should call our Q&A series Donuts and Arowanas.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll have the arowana in the background and always have a box of donuts.
All right. Sounds good.
Guys, we love you so much.
Thank you guys so much for everything. I guess there's not much to be said other than if you haven't subscribe, all that. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all that other stuff. But as always,
keep on tanking. I'm really on